Before we begin, ask yourself, what would you do if the house you inherited remembered your name and whispered it back? If you're into haunted houses, supernatural horror, and stories that end in hopeless fates, you're in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy voiceover horror stories like this one. They say you can't inherit madness, but I'm not so sure anymore. The letter came in early March, delivered in a pale envelope so old I thought it had yellowed from grief. My name was written in elegant, curling ink, the kind that belongs in dusty books and forgotten wills. I nearly threw it out, mistaking it for junk, but something about it felt familiar. Like a whisper spoken just beneath my name, it informed me I had inherited an estate, a manor, specifically tucked deep in the hills of Devonshire, England, from a great aunt I had never met. Her name was Eliza Wetherell, and I couldn't recall my parents ever mentioning her. But the paperwork was clear. I was next of kin, sole beneficiary. The whole thing smelled like a scam. So naturally, I brought Ben. Ben had been my friend since university. He believed in little and joked about everything. Ghosts? Only when I drink tequila. Haunted houses? Only if I can Airbnb it. Still, when I asked if he'd come with me just for a few days, he didn't hesitate. "You think this place has wine cellars and skeletons," he said, slinging his duffel bag over his shoulder at Heathrow. "Because I'm only interested in one of those." I laughed. Back then, I still could. The drive from the airport was longer than expected. Once we left the main road, the countryside grew ancient. Winding stone walls, crooked trees bent from sea wind, and fields that seemed more memory than soil. My GPS died an hour in. Ben joked the house didn't want to be found. When we finally arrived, dusk had swallowed the landscape whole. The manor stood like a patient creature, still, massive, and watching. Ivy clung to its stone-like veins, windows tall and narrow, gables sharp enough to cut. Two gargoyles perched above the double doors. I remember Ben squinting up at them. "Real welcoming place," he muttered. The doors creaked open before I could knock. And no one was there. Inside, the air was colder than it should have been. Not the damp chill of old buildings. This was deliberate. Like walking into a mouth that hadn't breathed in years, just hung in the air like mist. The grand hall had a spiral staircase, oil portraits lined along the walls, each with names carved into brass plates. They were all Wetherells, and they were all staring. I could swear one of them blinked. Ben clapped his hands. "All right, Scooby. You've got 3 days of my life before I go back to civilization. Let's find the booze and see if the ghosts want a party." I should have asked him to leave right then. We spent the first night unpacking and exploring the lower floor. The kitchen was enormous but unusable. Most of the equipment dated back a century. The dining room had a fireplace big enough to stand in, though the soot hadn't been cleaned in decades. Everything smelled faintly of lavender and something sour beneath it. I couldn't place it. That night, I took the bedroom on the second floor, the one with the least cracked wallpaper. Ben stayed in a guest room near the stairwell. We agreed to keep our phones charged and to meet for breakfast, but I didn't sleep. Not really. There was movement, not loud, just small shifts. A door creaking open down the hall. The sound of something soft brushing against the wooden floors. A clock ticking in a room that didn't have one. At some point, I heard whispering. Faint, childlike. I pressed my ear to the wall and held my breath. "Come see me," it said. The next morning, Ben looked like he hadn't slept either. "All right," he said, over instant coffee. "This place is creepy. Just objectively." I kept hearing something dragging. Dragging. He nodded. Like fabric? Or rope. But slow. Like someone's pulling it just to piss me off. I laughed. Still think it's just a vacation house." He smirked. "Still hasn't tried to kill me." So yeah, but something in his voice had changed. He didn't meet my eyes when he said it. The second day, we met the groundskeeper. Or rather, he met us. I was checking the back garden, or what was left of it, when an old man appeared by the hedge. He wore a flat cap and a coat older than either of us, and he didn't smile. "You're the new one," he said to me. His voice was like gravel in a well. I nodded. "You worked here?" He didn't answer, just looked up at the manor, then back at me. "You shouldn't stay," he said. Ben emerged behind me. "Oh good, another welcoming local. Let me guess, the place is cursed." The old man ignored him. He just stared at me, and for a moment, it felt like he saw something through me. "She remembers," he said quietly. "The house does. And she don't forget." Before I could ask who she was, he turned and walked into the trees. That night, Ben disappeared. I didn't notice at first. I assumed he was sleeping off the beer he'd found in the cellar. But by noon the next day, I started knocking on his door. No answer. The room was empty. His bed untouched. His phone still plugged in, fully charged. I searched every floor. I called out. I even walked the perimeter of the estate twice. Nothing. Just the ticking of unseen clocks and the wind moving through the hallways like a voice trying not to scream. By evening, I was frantic. I tried the car, the engine sputtered, then died. I checked the reception. No bars. I ran to the main road, only to find it blocked by fallen branches and a ditch that hadn't been there yesterday. The house was waiting for me when I returned. Its lights were on, though I hadn't turned them on. The front door creaked open before I touched it. Inside, on the grand staircase, lay a single black boot. Ben's, still warm. I didn't sleep that night either. I sat on the grand staircase, holding Ben's boot like it might still be attached to something. Someone. The air in the house felt heavier than it had the day before, like it had shifted, like it had noticed me in a new way. I called out his name until my voice cracked. I searched every floor again, every room, every closet. I even opened doors that had been sealed shut with rusted locks and layered dust. Nothing. Just cold air, creaking boards, and shadows that seemed to twitch when I wasn't looking directly at them. And then, the nursery. I found it by accident. There was a narrow hall behind a bookcase on the third floor, the kind of passage that shouldn't exist in a house built by sane people. It led to a door with chipped paint and a handle that turned far too easily. Inside was a room preserved in time. Crib, rocking horse, toys made of wood and tin. A mobile hanging from the ceiling swayed gently. Though the window was shut tight and the air was still, the walls were papered with faded murals of birds. Sparrows, mostly, but every so often, one of the painted birds had no eyes. I stepped in. The floor creaked beneath me like it was sighing. Then the mobile spun on its own, faster and faster, and just as I reached up to stop it, the door slammed shut behind me. I don't remember screaming, but my throat was raw when I forced it open again. No one was there. No wind, no mechanism, no prank. I didn't know it yet, but that room was hers, and she didn't like sharing. I tried leaving again the next morning. Bags packed. House keys left on the foyer table. As I stepped outside, I froze. There were footprints in the dirt, leading away from the house. Bare feet. Child-sized. I followed them. Through the overgrown path. Past the dead orchard. All the way to the tree line. And then they stopped. Just stopped. Like the owner had been plucked from the earth. There were no other tracks. No signs of Ben. No dragging. No tire marks. Just that eerie final step and silence. That was the first day I heard my own voice when I wasn't speaking. It came from the library. I'd been sorting through old documents, trying to make sense of the Wetherell family line, when I heard a whisper from the hall, "Don't open the red journal." My heart slammed into my ribs. I stood perfectly still. Then I heard it again, my voice exactly, but low and distant, like it was being played from a cracked cassette. "Don't open the red journal." I turned the corner. Nothing. Just a bookshelf. And sitting neatly on the shelf, a small leather-bound book. Red. I stared at it for a long time before touching it. It smelled of dust and cloves. The pages were brittle. The first entry was dated 1891. Eliza Wetherell. Her handwriting was tight, slanted, precise. The early entry spoke of loneliness, expectations, a child born still, and her belief that the house was grieving with her. Then came the turning point. "She weeps in the walls when I sleep," I told Mother, but she only smiled and said the Wetherell women always hear her first. I think the house was made for something else, something older than us. I turned the page. Ben won't stop screaming. I think he's in the floors now. My fingers locked. My breath hitched. I flipped forward. Each entry got more erratic. Words scrawled over each other. Sentences written in the margins, sometimes upside down. A few in a language I didn't recognize. And then one final entry, dated a century later than the rest. Yesterday's date. In perfect, modern English. "She knows you read this." I dropped the journal. When it hit the floor, the room went dead silent, and then I heard her laugh from behind the bookshelf. That night, the manor revealed its appetite. It started with the walls breathing. Literally, I saw the wallpaper expand and contract, like lungs beneath plaster. Then the humming began. A child's voice, sweet and tuneless, echoing through the halls. I tried to block it out. I barricaded the doors. I stuffed towels under the gaps. I turned on the TV just to have noise, but the screen only showed my reflection, not my face. Just me sitting on the couch from behind. I turned to look. And no one was there. When I turned back, the TV was off, and my reflection was still staring. I went to the basement. I don't remember choosing to. My body just moved, like being guided by a leash made of suggestion. The stairs were damp. The lights flickered. I could hear the house creaking above me like it was shifting to get comfortable. Then I saw the scratch marks. On the inside of the basement door. Deep. Splintered. As though someone had been trying to claw their way out. And below the scratches, blood. Dark. Old, but still wet. That's when I knew the house wasn't haunted. It was alive, and I wasn't its guest. I was its meal. I didn't go back upstairs that night. I stayed in the basement, huddled between broken wine racks and rusted tools, surrounded by old cobwebs and the stench of mildew. There was a low thrum in the walls, like a heartbeat, slow, deliberate, patient. Not mine. Not human. I watched the light bulb above me sway, even though the air was still. Shadows moved where they shouldn't. They slid along the walls like oil, pooling, crawling, shifting into something almost like, no, not yet, not then. When morning came, I climbed back up, slowly, carefully, expecting someone to be waiting. But the house was quiet again. Still, too still. Ben's boot was gone from the stairs. In its place, a mirror, oval, framed in iron, hung crookedly on the banister where no mirror had been before. And in the reflection, the house behind me looked different, wrong. The wallpaper was new, freshly pressed. The paintings smiled with all their teeth. I saw movement upstairs, a figure drifting down the hall, trailing a long white dress. But when I turned, nothing, just rotting paper. peeling paint, empty halls. I returned to the library. I don't know why. It was the last place the house had spoken clearly. Maybe I thought I could reason with it. Foolish thought I found a trunk beneath the hearth locked, but the key had already been left in the lock. As if it wanted me to open it. Inside were dozens of letters, bound in string, each addressed to a different Wetherell descendant. Each unopened. I pulled the first letter free. The handwriting was familiar. It was mine. I tore it open. To whoever I used to be, I tried to warn you. You should never have stepped through the front door. We were chosen the moment she remembered our name. The house wants blood. It needs family. It can't die, but we can feed it. And if you're reading this, you already have. There was no signature, but I knew it was me. I dropped the letter. My hand was trembling. That was when I noticed my fingertips were splintered. Small cuts. Tiny, paper-thin lacerations across my skin, like I'd been handling glass in my sleep. And my shirt sleeves were soaked at the cuffs. In blood. I ran to the washroom. I scrubbed and scrubbed, but the red just spread. Up my arms. Across my chest. My reflection gurgled a laugh. I watched it in the mirror. It didn't move the way I did. When I stepped back, it leaned in. Its eyes hollow. Its smile stitched. Its face was mine, but older, decaying. Cracked down the middle like an old doll. Then it whispered, "You'll be part of the walls by nightfall." I smashed the mirror. Behind it, buried in the plaster, was a jawbone. Human. Still wet. I ran outside, down the steps, across the rotting field, into the forest beyond the gates. Anything to get away. And for a while, it worked. The trees were dense. The smell of the manor faded. I saw birds again, heard wind, felt light. I ran until my legs gave out, until my lungs burned, until I collapsed beneath an old elm. That's when I saw the road, the one we'd driven in on. I staggered toward it, relief flooding my chest. And as I reached it, the air changed. Heavy, dry, silent. I turned around. The forest was gone. Just the manor. Behind me, closer than it should have been. Its windows open like eyes, watching me, waiting. I didn't go back willingly, but I ended up there all the same. Every path, every escape, every exit led back to the front steps. The doors were always open, always waiting. I was beginning to understand. The manor wasn't in the countryside anymore. It was somewhere else now. Somewhere beneath that. A place stitched together by blood, memory, and pain. A pocket outside of sense. And it had me. I was the final heir. I slept in the drawing room that night, knife clutched to my chest, fire burning low. At some point, I must have drifted off. I dreamt of Ben. He stood at the top of the grand staircase, naked, his skin covered in words. Names, dates, some in languages I couldn't read. He looked at me and said, "She's in the walls now. She wants your name next." Then he opened his mouth, and from his throat spilled keys, dozens of iron keys, clinking, singing. I woke choking. In my hand was a key I hadn't had before, and carved into the wood beside the fireplace, as if by invisible hands, were the words, "Use it." I held the key until sunrise. I didn't move. I barely blinked, just sat by the fireplace, watching the shadows grow longer, deeper, until they finally started to move on their own. The house no longer pretended to sleep. It watched. It whispered. It breathed. And the key in my hand pulsed, like a vein, warm to the touch, beckoning. I followed where it led. Up the stairs, past the nursery. To a door I hadn't noticed before, part of the wainscoting, disguised beneath layers of grime and peeling wallpaper. The key turned easily. Inside was a narrow corridor, almost like a service crawl space. No windows, no light. But I didn't need light. I knew where it went. Down. Deep. Deeper than the basement. Deeper than the house should go. The staircase spiraled endlessly. The air grew colder with each step, thick with the scent of iron and rot. The walls narrowed. The ceiling pressed down. And finally, the steps ended. I stood in a chamber of stone, lit by nothing, yet I could still see everything. There were no furnishings, no altar, no bodies, only walls, and on them, carvings, names, dates, generations of Wetherells etched in a single, endless spiral. From the center of the floor, a shaft of black stone rose, smooth and glistening, like obsidian or glass, and in the reflection, I saw her. She stood behind me, not a ghost, not an echo, something else. Tall, pale, faceless, draped in veils of whispering fabric that moved like smoke. Her hands were long, thin, jointless. She didn't breathe. She only leaned close and placed a hand on my shoulder. I couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't think, only feel. The manor opened inside me. Every floorboard, every nail, every scream embedded in its walls poured through me like a flood. I saw Eliza Wetherell burying her child under the nursery floorboards. I saw the brother who burned himself alive in the attic. I saw Ben, crying in a mirror that had no reflection, and I saw myself, not as I am, but as I was, and as I would be. The woman leaned in, and she whispered,
"You are mine. You always were. You are the voice behind the keyhole."
I tried to run, tried to pull away, but my body was no longer mine. My skin cracked like paint. My veins blackened, my eyes filled with soot, and then everything went still, dark, cold. I woke in the study. The fire crackled gently. The clock ticked. All normal. Too normal. I looked down at my hands. They were not mine. Older, bruised, cracked, and across the room, in the mirror above the mantel, I saw myself. Or rather, the thing that now wore my face. It smiled and whispered, "We are the house now." Sometimes I still scream, but no one hears me. Not really. They only hear the creaking floorboards, the wind behind the walls, the key that rattles in the lock at night. They think it's just an old house settling. But I know the truth. I am still here. And if you listen closely, put your ear to the wood, you'll hear me. Would you survive a night in that manor? Or would you become just another whisper behind the keyhole? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more psychological horror and supernatural hauntings, make sure to like, share, and hit that bell. Your next nightmare might be just one story away.